Let me also welcome Ambassador Veena Sikri, former High Commissioner to Bangladesh, joining us on the broadcast. Thank you so much, Ambassador Sikri. Now, your thoughts on this much-awaited implementation of the Citizenship Amendment Act, despite the kind of furor we see, which has been deliberate, the deliberate attempt to construct a negative narrative around this, especially from outside quarters. What are your thoughts on the implementation, and why do you think this was the need of the hour?
Well, I think first of all, we have to congratulate the government on the implementation of the CAA. I think it was a much needed step that was taken at that time, and then it became unnecessarily controversial because an effort was made to inject all the wrong ideas into it, as though it was changing the citizenship of any citizen of India, as though it was bringing the so-called religious factor into citizenship. None of this was true. I think the Citizenship Amendment Act was fulfilling a long pending requirement that the Indian society and community had felt since 1947.
Yes.
We do know that even in 1950, the Nehru-Liaquat Pact had actually been drawn up to ensure rights of minorities in the countries of India, Afghanistan, Pakistan and Bangladesh. And we know that despite that, the refugees kept coming into India because they were facing a lot of problems. All the religions mentioned in the CAA, the Hindus, the Sikhs, the Buddhists, the Jains, the Parsis and the Christians, they were facing these problems and they kept coming in. We do know after 1971, this problem became much worse. We do know that former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh spoke about this in Parliament.
Right.
That something like the CAA is needed to help these refugees who have come, who are living in camps, have no recourse to any kind of resources in India and are facing great difficulties. So taking into account the broad view of the Indian political parties and the Indian people, the CAA was very carefully drawn up.
Okay.
It gave a deadline. It allowed people to come in, and now it's being implemented, which absolutely proves that the government was right in drawing it up. And when it's being implemented, it is being accepted by everybody.
Okay. So, but in a larger frame of things, what are the current global trends do you see? The Indian government is calling it historical, but as a diplomat yourself, and you've been the High Commissioner of Bangladesh, and Bangladesh often also happens to be one of the countries associated with this. In that scheme of things, what does it do to India's global image, especially in this space, humanitarian refugee crises?
Well, there has been an effort to malign India's global image using the CAA. But I think that all the Indian communities living abroad, I've seen reports and articles and assessments by the Indian communities living abroad, and they have all welcomed the CAA because they realize that they are in touch with people who have had to come to India because of the oppression they faced, and coming to India, they are requesting, after decades and decades of living in camps, they are requesting early route to citizenship for them. And this is what the CAA is giving to a very specific group of people. Linked to partition of 1947, complicated greatly by the breakup of Pakistan and the creation of Bangladesh in 1971, and bringing all these people together into the Indian mainstream. The fact that the CAA has now been implemented has shown to the rest of the world. I think this is a very important factor, that whereas earlier on, before the elections and for other matters, there were voices abroad who were trying to malign India's image. But the fact that with the implementation of the CAA, all these people are quiet, it shows that they actually have to accept it. And they find nothing wrong with the implementation of the CAA. So I think it has proved not only that the government has fulfilled its promise, but that its promises and its the drawing up of the CAA was based on the correct premises to help the people who are in need as a one-time exemption that was given.
Okay. Ambassador Sikri, we're also joined by Praful Ketkar, organizer, editor and political analyst, who also understands CAA and especially the implications of it. Praful, if you could hear me, we would want to understand from you the timings of this legislation. The passage of this legislation and the distribution of these certificates has been widely questioned. Now, how do you see this? There is an absolute delink, I understand, but how do you explain the timings of the development?
Sakal, the process when it was started immediately after 2019 election, what was the timing? Government had, as far as I know, BJP as a party and ideologically are always stood for this, and it was mentioned in their manifesto. So there was nothing secret about it. Now the act was passed because there were certain misconceptions, and the laws, when the laws are passed, the rules are to be framed. So it took some time, and
Okay.
now the rules are being implemented. After implementation, now the certificates are provided. So there is nothing, I think, has to do with the election. The point here is that we need to understand the historical context that when the India's partition took place and Pakistan was created purely on the religious lines, it was an agreement between the Prime Minister of India and Prime Minister of Pakistan, Pandit Nehru and Liaquat. It was known as the Nehru-Liaquat Pact, that both of the countries will protect their minorities.
Correct.
India adhered to that commitment. When it comes to Pakistan, which was then East Pakistan and West Pakistan, please understand, today in 1951 census, Muslim population in India was 9%, which is believed to be 16 to 17% now. When it comes to the population of Hindus and other minorities in Pakistan and now present day Bangladesh, present day Pakistan, then known as West Pakistan, which was around 16%, now Hindus are reduced to 1.5%.
Okay.
And Hindus in Bangladesh, which were around 23%, are reduced to 8%. There were more than 55,000 Sikh families in Afghanistan, which are reduced to 200, less than 100 families in Afghanistan now. So where are all these people? They have taken refuge either in India or outside somewhere, but they are looking for some kind of citizenship.
You see, there is an orchestrated attempt to snowball this into a controversy, and these objections, if I may use these words, are purely political in nature. But there is nothing political in the move. Praful.
Absolutely. See, it was a historical baggage. If you read our Constituent Assembly debate, Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, earlier Mahatma Gandhi, even at some point Pandit Nehru, all of them have given commitment that if you face any persecution, you are always welcome in India. The point is, who should be welcome in India? Now, the minorities that this act clearly defines, if I have to explain the Western audience, and Dr. Jaishankar, who is extra official, is absolutely right when he gave a rebuttal to some of the Western concerns. But I have to explain the audience. See, in 1990, for example, this one act was enacted in the US called as Lautenberg Amendment, Public Law 101-167.
Okay.
It was enacted on 21st November 1989. It specifically mentions that the people who are persecuted in the Soviet land, that is the earlier erstwhile, it has a Cold War context. And what is the mention? The mention is specifically Jews, evangelical Christians, Ukrainian Catholics, and Ukrainian Orthodox.
So there is a global precedence, there is a trend, and you're quoting, I would like to go across to Ambassador Sikri here. So, those who are lecturing us, I think Ambassador Sikri, I would not like to get into it country-wise, but, they should have a look at their own backyard. Purely from the prism of humanitarian/refugee crisis, and this is where it comes, India's CAA. Am I right?
Absolutely right. India has shown that we are very deeply aware of any refugee problems that the people who have come in, and if they have come in legally based on the agreements done after independence in 1947, and they are facing these problems, we are going to look after them. We are going to take care of their rights and bring them into the Indian mainstream. I think all the hullabaloo that was created at that time and during these elections is sought to be recreated or rebuilt up quite wrongly on entirely false premises, has totally collapsed because with the issue of these cards, it has been shown that the government has walked the talk, and this is meant for a specific group of people who were living in India as refugees, entered before 31st December 2014, and it is their rights that we are looking after, and no other citizenship rights of any person of India have been affected, and the rights to live in India, the rights to apply for Indian citizenship continue as before under pre-existing Indian laws for any person who wants to come and live in India, and that is continuing to happen. I mean, for example, in 2018, we heard that the Baluch fighter, the Bukti, Domber Bukti, he's been given citizenship in India. On a case-to-case basis, these things are going on, and this is to go on as part of the Indian rules and regulations of citizenship. But to create this problem about the CAA on false premises was completely incorrect, and this has been completely blown apart, and Indian government's position has been fully vindicated.
Okay, I'm just going to ask one last question from each one of you. Praful, so the larger message that goes across. I mean, elections come, elections go. Just, I think we are in the last lap of it. But this is going to stay for posterity. I mean, this is, how do you think this is historical and unprecedented as envisioned or described by the current government?
See, as I see it, India is very clear that India has a civilizational responsibility towards the minorities in the partitioned territories of India, because at one point they were India, they were people of India, so they have every right to take refuge in India. One. Two, they have faced civilizational injustice due to the decision of partition at the behest of some fundamentalist element and actually orchestrated by the colonial power. Now, because they have faced so much for the last 75 years, it doesn't mean that they should continue to face so. So, India has delivered a civilizational justice to the people who face the brunt of minorities, the horrors of minorities, and now they need a dignified life with some form of citizenship and identity. India is committed to do so. With giving first 300 citizenship certificates, India has shown that commitment, reiterated that commitment, and I think this process will be smoother now.
Okay, fair, point taken. Ambassador Sikri, your thoughts, please.
My thoughts are very clear that I think the image of India that was thought to be maligned, that image can no longer be maligned on this count at all. And the CAA, the implementation of the CAA, the way in which it has been carried through, and the citizenship certificates have been given, this really proves that India's was a bona fide case of taking on board the very valid difficulties that this group of people were facing who had entered India from these countries after facing oppression in those countries, and based on agreements concluded between India and those countries in the past, dating back to 1950, and taken on board by across the political spectrum in India by all groups. This commitment to this group of refugees had been given by Prime Minister Modi's government, and it has been seen through. All the hullabaloo has fallen by the wayside, has proved to be completely artificially created based on wrong premises, tending and wanting to mislead not only Indian citizens but citizens living abroad, people living abroad, mislead these people about the situation in India. But all this has fallen by the wayside, and the government of India's position stands fully vindicated and correct.
So this has actually come in a long way in terms of putting India at the global high table, Ambassador Sikri. This also?
Yeah, absolutely. It shows that when India takes a step like this, it has taken it with full seriousness. It has taken that step, taking on board every international and national commitment that India has. It does not in any way affect India's commitment to its own citizens. It does not in any way affect the rules and regulations that India has in place since the time of independence for people wanting to come and live in India and work in India and gain Indian citizenship. It is a new special category created for these refugees who had come over the years before December 31st, 2014, and are living in India under very difficult circumstances. It is giving them their rights, a commitment that all governments of India have made to this group of people over the years, which has been fulfilled only by this government and carried out to its last degree. So it has absolutely strengthened India's position at the high table and showed that India does not take these issues lightly. Every step that India takes is done with due seriousness, after due thought, due diligence, and is meant keeping fully in place India's position in the world.
Yes, India on global high table and leaving none behind, if I may put it this way, when it comes to Citizenship Act. Thank you very much, all of my guests. I am going to thank Ambassador Veena Sikri, former High Commissioner to Bangladesh. It's always such a pleasure talking to you, ma'am. And thank you so very much, Praful Ketkar, as always, sharing your insights into something which really, really matters the most when it comes to country and the real people, real issues. Thank you both of you for joining us on this special broadcast.